Hi, everyone. It's really nice to see you all here, that you are smiling and having fun, seemingly, until this moment. So let's talk about accessibility. About accessibility in practice, to be precise. But I'll start from afar. Today, I got up at 5 a.m. and decided to explore the city, because unfortunately that's the only day of the conference while I am present, because I have to go in the afternoon. So I saw this beautiful venue without anyone around, in this beautiful colors, like natural light, the so-called blue hour right in the morning. Also the cathedral. If there are any locals here, I do envy you because you live in an amazing city. It's very beautiful. And this tower, it's strikingly nice. And then I saw this beautiful scenery from the top, the cathedral and the sky. But unfortunately, not all people can see this beauty in the way I did. So, accessibility. It might be surprising, but I am not an accessibility expert. I don't know this area of knowledge that deep to call myself an accessibility expert. But still, I have some useful experience, hopefully also useful for you. My journey in accessibility started in 2019 with curiosity and friends. These are my friends. And in 2020, we conducted a course for governmental officials in Ukraine. And back then, I couldn't attend in person. Now it's my turn to talk about accessibility and show his picture to you. So, is accessibility important? Of course, undeniably, yes. But is it fun? That's what I see as a crucial problem. When we become designers, we are excited about something in design, and it drives us to explore more, like UI animation, icon design, creating modern interfaces. That's great, it's part of the profession, and that's why we get better and better at it. But accessibility doesn't seem to be much fun. Because what you encounter immediately are the laws, regulations, standards, requirements, explanations of those requirements. And unfortunately, when people think about accessibility, it's rather so-called negative motivation. There are two types of motivation: when you want to avoid something bad, or when you are trying to get something nice. And the first one, unfortunately, drives people to explore accessibility and implement accessibility features. As it often happens in reality, at some point in the company, top management comes to you and says, OK, from now on, we don't want to be sued and pay millions in fines, so everything should be accessible, whatever that means. But what if we imagine a better world, when we apply accessibility to our digital products, not just out of necessity to be compliant with the laws, but also, additionally to that, because it's such a useful and fun thing to do. And today, hopefully, I'll show you the fun part of accessibility that can excite people, so that they're genuinely interested in doing something in this area. So what we're going to talk about today. First, a couple of quick observations, then we'll figure out why testing is so important, and finally, accessibility testing checklist, a step-by-step guide, what you should do to prepare for your first accessibility testing session with real users, not just using the tool. What I observed is that in the design world, everyone knows about color contrast. Most of the plugins for Figma, most of the articles that you find on the internet, Medium, they start with color contrast. And although this topic is extremely important and still crucial, because there are many websites with light gray font on the white background, still it's not everything. Literally 99% of everything practical about accessibility is not color contrast. And who is responsible for accessibility? Apparently, not designers. When it comes to practical implementation of accessibility, applying it to a digital product, software engineering is accountable for most of it. But designers impact a substantial part of what developers will later implement. That's why, if we think this way, half of the accessibility stuff is on our shoulders. By the way, how many designers do we have here? Raise your hands if you're designers. Great. And front-end engineers? Amazing. Good for you. So, how do most blind people usually browse the web? Raise your hands if you think A is the right option. No one? OK. B? C? And D? OK, still some people. Of course, the right answer is C. There is technology that converts text to speech, and this is how people with severe visual impairments, including blindness, usually browse the web. And interestingly, those people can help you a lot. There is such a fact, or I would say rather observation, that approximately 80% of all accessibility issues can be identified if you involve blind people. But again, it's some simplification. It would be more correct to say people who use screen readers, because it doesn't always the same. Sometimes screen readers are used by not blind people and vice versa. But for the sake of simplification, let's stick to that, just because we are talking about your first accessibility testing session and how to prepare for it. OK, after those initial facts, let's talk about why testing. Why not something simpler, more automated? I don't know, AI, ChatGPT, let it do all the work for us. So how can we check if your digital product is accessible or not? Two main options: audit and testing. Audit can be automated, manual, and hybrid. Means that the person or a machine, plugin, tool compares your website or application with the list of regulations, standards, or rules, and then provides a report for you. And there is testing, involving real people, like usability testing, but accessibility testing. They have much similar. So using a plugin, it's nice. It's better than nothing. Involving people with disabilities into your testing is great as well. But probably the combination of both is the strongest approach. What are the benefits of testing compared to audit? First of all, it's the meaningful scenario. Unlike the machine, plugin, or just an expert looking at the checklist, here we can observe how a person naturally uses the website or application without our hints, without any assistance and guidance, just as they usually do with most of other websites. Besides, there are two roles here: moderator or facilitator, a person who conducts the session, and a participant, usually multiple participants, people using certain assistive technology. And resources are quite different. Instead of checklists, here we have video conferencing tool, testing script, note-taking template, stuff like that. And this meme is about the typical situation when tools, automated tools, plugins don't help that much, like alternative text, which is a good thing to do for all the images. I would say it's the rule of modern digital etiquette. And if it's there, but for example, it's written incorrectly, just some unnecessary word tag or other unrelated content, like the name of the author of the picture, instead of describing the picture, then it won't be revealed via those tools. Only a person can distinguish whether it's good and useful or not. So compliance with WCAG, ADA, other standards and laws, it's nice, it should be there, but laws are not perfect, and they won't help you identify lots of issues. So real accessibility is not equal to that, although, of course, all the authors of the laws do their best to create rules and standards in order to reach real accessibility. But it's not there. So testing is powerful because it's contextual. Let's look at this example. Do you recognize this app? Raise your hands if you've ever used that, especially non-native speakers. I think that's for you. Yeah, that's Grammarly. Spell checker with some advanced features, including an analysis of your style and stuff like that. By the way, it was created by Ukrainians. And Grammarly, if you test Grammarly, at least I remember one of the previous versions, the interaction would look like that. So if a screen reader user, usually a blind person in our cases when we tested this app, opens and tries to navigate with their keyboard because they don't see the screen, that's the order of the elements that they encounter while clicking through the screen. And it's not logical, because you want to jump between a certain part of your text and then the highlighted error and suggestion. So this would be logical. And unfortunately, any plugin, any automated tool will never give you any hints that something is wrong with this interaction. So to sum up, audit is fine, let it be there, but it might not reveal if a digital product is easy to use, efficient, and delightful. Imagine that digital products should be also delightful for people with disabilities. But it's hard to achieve all those things. Now let's talk about accessibility testing checklist. How to test digital products exactly, step by step. Because if you're not prepared, you'll be in trouble. Today we'll talk about 4 main points: recruiting users, preparation, session facilitation, and summarizing results. Let's go into recruiting users. Have you ever thought about where would you recruit users for accessibility testing? Any ideas? Raise your hands if you've ever thought about that. Like how people use that in reality, how to contact them. Great. So someone tried. But before we dive into the sources of participant recruitment, let's first talk about the diversity and how many different disabilities there are in the world. There is a great resource, IBM Inclusive Design Hub, and they have this classification there, but I think a short reminder would be okay. Depending on the census involved, there can be different disabilities then, by severity, permanent, temporary, situational. Last year, I had temporary disability when I injured my foot, and I tested the accessibility of urban space. Yeah, it was great learning, but maybe I'll talk about it in detail next time. But more important, we should figure out what assistive technology people use. It tells us much more, and it's more practical when you are planning accessibility testing sessions. So this criterion is most important, unlike census involved and severity of disability. These are 4 popular means owing to which people can browse the web. Refreshable braille displays, they are quite expensive, not widely used, so we won't talk about them a lot today. High contrast displays and modes are extremely popular and sometimes even used people without like medically confirmed disability, and often in combination with other assistive technologies. Then virtual assistants, they are useful for everyone, and that's what I think is a great example of universal design. And of course, screen readers. The most popular piece of software. Here you can see an example where a blind user, user with low vision, combines 2 methods, a screen reader and a high contrast mode. And that's the weather forecast app, and we tested it. It was kind of working, but not perfectly. Now, where to find those users? There are 3 main sources. research services, like specialized platforms where you can purchase the time of users according to demographics and other characteristics. Usually it's quite costly. Then social media, you can find support groups, then communities of people with disabilities, social enterprises and organizations, and actually those social enterprises themselves, you can write an email and see if they can help you. These are examples of popular research services where you have actually that filter to find people with certain disability or more accurately that use a certain assistive technology, a screen reader in our case. AccessWorks is a specialized platform, so they are quite useful. As for social enterprises, I think you can find them in your country or in your city. In Ukraine, there is Inclusive IT. When I lived in Berlin, we communicated with the Federation of the Blind and Visually Impaired people there. And now, in the Netherlands, there is a Vision Association. Again, great organization that everyone can contact and involve those people in testing sessions. That's another example, testing on mobile, but it's broadcast on the laptop. You can see it. Does it work? Yeah, you can see it here. Students test popular news websites with Lydia. She's from Germany, has blindness, and she's employed at a governmental institution. And that's another point why accessibility matters, because it creates new workplaces for people. They can truly be part of our society and not feel discriminated. So what to start with? For your first testing sessions, just choose 3-5 people who either have blindness or low vision, use a screen reader or a high contrast mode or both, and can share their screen while talking to you through an online meeting tool. But it doesn't mean that you get those users for free. If you represent business and these are not educational purposes, then think of a fair compensation for their time. Like always with usability testing involving user in those, here the same principle. The next point, preparation, tools, tasks, and wording. We'll have 3 main bullet points in this checklist. Here, we'll talk about format, communication tool, and testing script. Let's talk about format. There are basically 2 options, online or offline. Benefits of online. First of all, users will use their native environment. They will use their software, assistive technology, computer, laptop, mobile phone, whatever, that they have at home, which is set up, and usually these are quite individual settings. That's important. Of course, some profound users have portable versions of their screen reader so they can bring it to you, but it's more convenient for them to use it. It's more natural. So you're going to have more accurate insights. Besides cost and time efficiency, because you don't have to pay for their commute to the office or provide additional service so that they feel comfortable on the way to your office. And faster global recruitment. You are not tied to your city or even country. You can recruit people from everywhere on the earth. That's an example of remote testing through Skype. I know that it's not popular anymore, but it was convenient for our users. And it was the educational session for the students of Ukrainian Catholic University. And here is a user with blindness who is quite proficient with basic software. And then there is the offline format. It's also useful, but for more specific niche cases, like testing products in development if you don't have the live public version yet, helping inexperienced users, or testing mobile apps, because a person can bring their phone to your office. Here is a setup for a mobile testing session. It was not accessibility testing, to be honest, but it would look the same. So online format is preferable. I'd recommend starting with it. Another example of testing session. We were conducting it with my friend, also for students. Here is the screen that our tester shared with us so that we could see everything. Now let's talk about communication tools. There are general and specialized tools. General tools like Zoom, Google Meet, Skype, Microsoft Teams, and specialized usually are combined all in one platforms where you can recruit users, use the tool itself, and all the advanced features that it offers, like note-taking, automatic transcript, click heat maps, and stuff like that. But the tricky thing is that those tools are quite expensive, and at the same time, they can confuse your users. Because if the only thing they've used in private life was Skype, or let's say Zoom, then the interface that they've never dealt with can confuse them, and you will lose precious time and generally maybe even biased results of the testing. So using the video conference tool that people know well is preferable. Here is an example, and it's quite interesting because look at the ratio of the screen. It was desktop computer, but the user doesn't see the screen. And it doesn't matter for them whether it's narrow or full screen. And when she shared it with us, this window with us, this is how we saw it. And I think that's an interesting insight into how people use their assistive technology in reality and what the site looks like, because sometimes websites are not robust enough and the layout can be broken, which will confuse visually impaired users even more. Now, testing script. Good session cannot be without a good testing script. It has typical structure. If you've ever conducted usability testing, then it's approximately the same. There is introduction, where you introduce yourself, talk a little bit about this procedure, some maybe legal notes, then mini interview. You ask a couple of questions to learn more about your user, maybe reuse this information then later in the tasks so that they are more realistic. Then the tasks themselves, and finally the outro. Here is an example of the testing script template that I use quite often. It's public, and by the way, all the resources that I share and will share in this presentation, they will be collected in a convenient document at the end. Yeah, so that's the testing script, and it's great to have it fully written in front of you. That's actually the expert skill. It doesn't mean that you won't know what to say. And the tricky thing about testing, as well as in usability testing, and here in accessibility testing, that it includes quite a lot of improvisation. You prepare some stuff, but when it comes to tasks, you should react to what you see and what you hear from the user. That's why this part is primarily improvised. And the tasks, they should be realistic. Let's talk in detail what it means. Realistic tasks, they are based on what the user has already experienced. So when you choose people to participate in your testing, they should have certain experience with the topic that you're going to use. For example, if it's a news website, okay, maybe it can be anyone, but if you're testing corporate tool for accountants, it's better to invite someone who has worked as an accountant or at least in the financial area. Then tasks are situation-based. You are not talking about interface, about buttons and stuff like that. You are talking about the real-life situation that a person can encounter. Not something like open the main menu and find the other category, then click on the filter. No, not like that. Here are a couple of examples. For example, if you want to test an e-commerce website, namely the feature of purchasing a gift card, then instead of hinting directly what a user is supposed to do, just formulate the situation broadly. Or another example, if you're testing a corporate work tool. Instead of navigate to dashboard, something realistic. There is a great article on Nilsson Norman Group website about stepped tasks. Again, just read it on your own later. But generally, it's about going from broad tasks to something more specific, and you will learn about discoverability of features applying this methodology. Then what to avoid? Of course, leading tasks, when you literally tell a person what they are supposed to do. Then humorous tasks, again, won't help you. Selling, language, marketing, like here is our super feature that you will use, again, not needed, and technical jargon won't help either. because leading questions and other not recommended types of questions will only increase bias and socially expected answers. Now, facilitation. Let's talk a little bit more about screen readers, navigation, and giving hints. It happened to me actually during my first accessibility testing session when I was using the language which was not clear for the users because they couldn't see the screen. It's quite embarrassing, but after the first session or two, you will get used to non-visual language. So screen readers transform visual information into speech. And to be precise, they use not visuals, but source code, the meaningful parts of the source code. That's why the impact of software engineering is so crucial, even if there are many articles that designers created on color contrast. Here is an example of the website that our friend and consultant Ruslan, a blind Ukrainian software developer, created himself. And here on the right is the log of everything that the screen reader announces to him. It's in Ukrainian, but you can see that there is no information about styles, colors, and anything like that, only content. That's why logical construction of the website is so crucial when you want to make it accessible. There are different screen readers, not just one, not even just one per platform. They are standard, but many users prefer either to buy or download and install something separately because it's more profound, has more shortcuts. Like JAWS or NVDA, these are the most popular screen readers in Ukraine. They are both on Windows platform. And on mobile phone, it's a bit better, so people often stick to the standard screen reader that they have. Here is another interesting thing about accessibility that you cannot just see easily, is that truly accessible websites, they have hints only available for screen reader users. You see here the title, it includes only 2 words, but in this box is everything that the blind user will see. The whole sentence explaining the principles of how the form below works. And screen readers, they're quite unusual. We scan the screen. We can jump between different places in the random order. But for screen reader users, there is no such thing as look here in the corner or at the bottom. They can go to the next item, to the previous item, level up, level down, or go to all the elements of the same type. And the most annoying thing for them is the read more link, because it looks the same everywhere, although links themselves go to different places. Again, something you're going to discover during testing. So when you really have to give hints to your users, use non-visual language. These are not helpful things. These are helpful. Of course, UI hints should be at the very beginning, like click here, click there, only when your users are stuck. And summarizing results. This is the shortest part, because it deserves a separate talk about how to summarize and process results. Here is just this Miro board for inspiration, that it can be simple as that. Screenshots, notes, different color coding for different severity of risks and problems identified. And things to remember is to capture everything, because you never know what you're going to need next day. Raw data is not insights. And mind criticality and impact, because it will help you then in prioritizing and fixing the most crucial things first. And probably after your amazing accessibility testing sessions, you will be happy with the full list of insights and problems identified, but then it will be you who will fix it, and your team members, happy team members. There is an article on Smashing Magazine, so if you want to recall information from this talk, you can also always visit it. And there is one more thing that I wanted to talk about at the end of my speech. It's about accessibility problem right now. Because of the war, there will be more people with disabilities in Ukraine. And fortunately, lots of efforts are already put into making their life better and easier. These are the same people here, and Jana ran half marathon just 2 days ago, and Ivan learns how to live in this world without vision. So if you have such an inspiration, in this list of materials, I placed both useful links to all the materials, articles by Nielsen Norman Group, other authors, my articles, but also some charity foundations. Use this QR code and you will get the full list. So that's it from me for today. Thanks.
Thank you so much for the insights. There were many questions that came up as well. I think one of the most common ones actually was very similar to what we had in the previous session as well. So, for example, Sasha is wondering, my colleagues tend to lock the screen rotation in the app because, quotation mark, nobody uses that anyway. How do I convince people that are simply not aware how they make the app harder for others if you don't kind of consider, if you make too many assumptions? I tried showing statistics, but it doesn't seem to be, oh, testing, yeah. But I tried to show statistics, but it doesn't seem to be working too well. Accessibility, just to note, accessibility things tend to be used by a small amount of people, so that usually does not convince anyone.
Yeah, that's tough. And my today's talk was exactly about this situation. Statistics is fine. It's a great argument for some people, but not for others. So sometimes you have to excite people. You don't have to persuade many talented designers to craft great interfaces or create cute UI animations, because they are interested in that, and they can work overnight perfecting something that they are excited about. And I think testing accessibility is a great way to excite people, to show something surprising, something interesting.
Yeah, I think it's also kind of a matter of really making accessibility efforts sort of visible to the entire organization. Very often it's kind of hidden somewhere in a Google Drive folder only for designers, or maybe only for a few people who are actually doing accessibility work. But there is many other parts of organization don't even realize that there is any accessibility effort at all. And so actually bringing people in for just maybe a round of maybe 3-4 people for accessibility testing, and then make it visible, making maybe an event out of it, getting maybe some sort of a buy-in just for an event in the evening to show the results, to show the video recordings. I found it's really impactful to show actual people struggling with the product. And so if you can demonstrate that, maybe that could be kind of one way as well, right?
Exactly. I couldn't formulate that better. Storytelling is powerful. Storytelling is king. So statistics is fine. You can show it later, maybe after 20 slides. But first, it's a story of a particular person who struggles, who cannot be employed because the software they are supposed to work with is inaccessible. People who struggle with simple tasks and spend 3 times more time on that. Yeah, it helps a lot.
Right. But then the question is, what would be a good frequency of running testing? So you were mentioning like we would run, let's say, a round of accessibility testing. How many people do we need to get reliable results? And also, how often should we repeat it over time?
Mm-hmm. I guess many companies and many teams still struggle to conduct it at least once. So I'd suggest that more companies simply try that at least once, and then we can talk about frequency. Mature companies with mature UX culture, they conduct such sessions quite often, and then they even have separate departments working on accessibility only, and accessibility advocates, and they hire people with disabilities who use certain assistive technology to be part of the team and test everything, because they have the first-hand feeling and impression of that software.
Right. Right. There's also another thing that often comes up, which is we often think that, as I said in the very beginning, like, accessibility is not seen necessarily as this fun thing. It's very often seen as requirements, constraints, and with that comes this idea of, well, can we be creative while being accessible, right? And especially when you think about all these trends that we have around us, like be it, starting from parallax, moving images, moving backgrounds, fancy animations, fancy interaction design, and all of that, right? So the question, I guess, is, can the notion of pushing the boundaries with design, with graphic design, with visual design, and accessible bulletproof design, can they coexist? I'm kind of implying the answer here, but I would like you to answer that.
Yeah, they can coexist, and they often coexist. Recently, for the sake of research, I visited multiple websites, some of them belonging to organizations working in the area of accessibility, and they are quite contemporary. They are nice. I wouldn't say that they are those bulky brutalist with huge font and stuff like that. They're really cute to a certain extent. They look nice and they work nice as well. So I think this can coexist. Of course, there are exceptions. For example, so-called festival design, when it's created to impress and to push the boundaries of creativity. In this situation, those websites might not be accessible, and it can be extremely challenging to make them accessible, because then you will lose this creativity and special visual effects. For that case, you can always create the alternative version, the simplified version of the website.
Okay. I think it's a very good point for me in general when I try to ever convince people or make a point, strong point about accessibility. I always bring up the notion of closed captioning. How many of you actually turn on, like whenever you're watching Netflix or Apple TV or whatever, how many of you actually turn on captioning by default? Okay, I would say maybe 50%, 60%, right? That also depends, of course, on what language it is in, and so on and so forth. But it really has been evolving, so to the point that a lot of people are actually using closed captioning by default. The point is that if you actually apply your creative energy to make captioning better, you can do a lot of stuff. Like usually, captioning is just that text string at the bottom. But for example, if there is a dog barking in a particular place, right, there is a house or so, you can actually just place an icon right there indicating that it's coming from there. Right? You can have a lot of, you can actually apply design to make accessibility fun too. It's not like, I think that there are many things that could be really interesting. But I think, what do you think, when we spoke about color contrast, right? But where do you think we lack accessibility most these days? Like if we have people working in very different companies, organizations, businesses, right? Where can we make most impact with accessibility, with good accessibility?
Most impact? Two things. First of all, mass products. Something that's created for millions, obviously. Governmental services, public transportation, airports, weather apps, navigation apps, banking apps. And secondly, professional software, something that enables people to work, earn money, and be truly be part of the society, not be excluded. That's what I think are the two major areas.
Okay, and maybe the last one before we wrap up. Well, in your personal work, because I know you've been doing accessibility testing and you've been very passionate about it, with and without your medieval memes. Oh, that will be the last question, I think, by the way. What do you think was the biggest challenge that you experienced so far? Was it actually the buy-in, getting the buy-in, or was it actually the actual accessibility work?
I would say actual accessibility work, because when we are talking about accessibility testing, it's created to, of course, gather information about accessibility, but also as a side effect to excite people. And they are excited already, but then when it comes to implementation, there might be some problems with prioritizing, finding time, especially when accessibility is applied afterwards.
Right.
When you already have working software, it already earns money, and the company thinks about adding new features, and then, boom, accessibility. So you have to invest money without clear understanding when they're going to return.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what might be tricky with the existing products.
Okay, well, I do have to ask, before we wrap up here, what's the thing with medieval memes? Yeah, I think that some people are just curious, like, medieval, fine, memes, fine, medieval memes.
It's they're double hilarious.
I can see that, but I mean, because you need to understand that Slava has put together, I think, 50.
Yeah, I have a collection of 50 medieval memes on Medium, and the most tricky thing was to write alternative text.
So was it like, it was not generated by ChatGPT or anything?
No, it was me, because I hate ChatGPT. Not, but not because I think that AI is something is evil. It's technology like photography, like computers some time ago. I simply like writing myself. That's the reason.
Okay, so if you're ever interested in anything medieval, or specifically medieval memes, which would be like a bit of a niche, I would say, right? You can find a lot of medieval memes, and I think this list keeps growing. How many do you have so far?
Hundreds, I think.
So if you're interested...
There was a funny situation when we visited a medieval festival in Oranienburg, not far from Berlin.
That doesn't surprise me somehow.
And yeah, this is not surprising. But then one lady was selling reproductions of hilarious medieval images from real manuscripts. So she just redrew it with paint. And I came to that tent and immediately recognized one picture, which is quite popular, like the guy...
popular in the medieval
world, yes. The guy is pierced with multiple swords, including his head, and he's like smiling. Probably you've seen it. And I immediately bought it, and she was extremely surprised. She started telling me, like, you know, that's the real picture, and I continued, yeah, I know, that's the Manesse Codex from the 14th century, which is in Heidelberg. And she was surprised even more.
Well, I think you make incredible connections while being there. So I basically wish you a lot of beautiful adventures in that direction. So with this in mind, thank you so much, Slava, for joining us.